All right, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Kitchen Table Doctor. No, we're not going to be doing a stereo today. We're not going to be doing a computer, working on that. We got hundreds of them to work on. Don't worry, going forward. Today we're going to do something really interesting. Some years ago, at a flea market here in town, I bought because I do play the banjo. Don't ask me to go on YouTube and play it because, I suck. I don't really take lessons. But I bought this beautiful United Clock Company banjo clock made by the United Clock Company of Brooklyn, New York. And I believe this model was made in 1959. And the Brooklyn United Clock Company, the United Clock Company of Brooklyn, was really around from 1930 to about 1960. And they made a lot of novelty clocks. They made carriages with 4 horses that had clocks in the side. They made ships that had a clock in the side of the hull. And they also made this banjo clock here. And what makes this banjo clock exceptional is the state of preservation that it's in all these years later from 1959. Okay, all right, really? We're going to go there? All right, I'm older than the clock by a year, okay? But I'm also pretty well preserved, right? But, I picked this up, I think, for about $6 because it does not work. And the difference between this clock working and this clock not working can pretty much be seen on eBay, where if you go on and check it out, you can see some listings for some banjo, same exact banjo clock I have here. And the guy's got a few pictures on it. Let's see if we can get one enlarged here. And you can see it there. And it's a nice looking clock. It's certainly in no better shape than my clock is. The difference is that this clock works, and you can regularly and easily command, buy it now prices of $129. And these can be sold in working order for, regularly go for at least $100. And they're cute, and they're thematic. And you buy something like this and you put it on the wall, and you have a talking item. You have something of interest that not everybody has. And if you look around my home, you see I like to have all original artwork hanging up that I'll go into lengths and describe one day. But as it stands right now, I got it home. It said it was in non-working order. You know me, I have to check everything. I did get it mounted up on the wall. I ran the cord behind the wall here, comes through. Because this is going to be a closet, this is just temporary wiring for aesthetic stakes, because I'm going to close this in and make a closet out of that. And I've routed that through, and it actually comes down through the wall there. And I just have an extension cord to hook her up right now. And when I go to chooch her in the wall there, I'm going to go back and look it up. Well, she didn't smoke. That's a good thing. But you can see that that clock is deader than a doornail. So we have our basic motivation, guys. If we can get this clock chooching, not only do we have an interesting conversation piece that actually can tell time, but we have a interesting conversation piece, period, that I don't have to worry about my neighbors having them, okay? Having one of them, and that's the kind of guy I am. Let's figure out what we're going to do. The trick is we need to get it off of the wall here, and I believe the back clock part of it comes out of the clock of the housing here, the banjo housing. And if that's the case, we'll be able to take that out and maybe get her chooching again, guys. So let's take her to the kitchen table and get started. All right, guys. Well, I don't want to seem lazy. I flipped her around on the wall, and I had to route all the. I guess I'm so dumb. I should have gotten the thing working before I mounted it on the wall, but I guess I never thought I would have the time to put into it to get it working. And Lily, I just got motivated when I saw it up there and always showing the same time. I thought that really sucks. So instead of I have it routed all behind here and everything, it's gonna be a pain in the ass to get that off. So what I've decided to do is to just let it hang on the wall here. I'm going to open it up. It's real easy to access. You can see it has 2 small nuts, very flimsy sort of nuts on there that are holding the back of the case on. and this is the model number 260. It's manufactured by, I know it's upside down, by the United Clock Company of Brooklyn, New York, model 260. So we'll be able to chooch that on the internet a little bit and see if we find anything interesting if we get this thing going. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've got it hanging there for safety's sake. Of course, I have it unplugged down here. You can see her hanging there. So what I'm going to do now is I really don't have a socket. I'm not going to go get a socket. I'm just going to grab the needle nose pliers and remove those two screws holding her on, and we'll take a look and see what we got. Okay. Okay, guys, that was really easy. I just backed the piece out of the case after I removed the two nuts on the spindles here. And always, when you're working on a project, make sure to keep your hardware in a location. Don't let it just drop on the floor. And you'd be surprised on a busy looking carpet like this how difficult it can be to find parts. So we're looking inside now, and as you can see the gearing on this motor here on the internals there. And what typically happens is, and I've spoken to this with every electronic device that I work on, the problem is rarely the electricals that are in there because they tend to be passive components. The problem with most mechanical clocks is the mechanical, and this is an electrical clock, but it has mechanical components too. This wheel is supposed to be spinning constantly on here because it drives the second hand in the on the clock face there. And as you can see right now, it's not doing anything. I've replugged it in to the wall there, and you can see, and I'm checking it. So that leads me to believe that we probably have some type of mechanical issue here. And let's face it, this clock is getting on about 60 years old, so it wouldn't be unusual to have possibly the gear wheels frozen up here. And what they probably need is a little bit of a lubrication and a little bit of a jump start on the motor here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the shop and we're going to pick up a specific lubricant, and we're going to talk about lubricants a second before we hit this with some lubrication, okay? Stick with this is going to get interesting. Okay, there's the clock. I'm back. I've been out to the shed, and you see I have two cleaners in my hand. The typical homeowner or handy guy, when he's going to go to try to get a clock working or something like that, he's probably going to properly assume, like me, that the problem is a mechanical one in nature, and that all he has to do is pick up a can of WD-40, fire it into the gear mechanism there, and let her rip and hope for the best, and start turning those and teeth of the gear with maybe a fine blade screwdriver or something like that. You know, that clock may run, or it probably won't run. If it does run, though, there's a very good chance that the works are going to be gummed up, because trying to lubricate a clock with something like WD-40 is the equivalent of performing brain surgery with a sledgehammer. It is just too viscous. It has too much thickness to it to really be a proper lubricant for something like an electric clock. You wouldn't go to a watchmaker and expect him to have WD-40 on the counter unless the hinges on the door to the shop were creaking, okay? So we're going to sit that down for a second, and we're going to talk about a cleaner and electrical cleaner and lubricant. And this one is specifically made for contacts, and it's sold by Radio Shack. Some people call it Deox. You know, when I have stereo equipment that the knobs and the volume control is staticky, you can shoot some of this inside, work the control back and forth, and you know, there's a good chance that static will clean up. So what I want to do, I don't want to fiddle with the clock too much. I want to take this lubricant and I want to hit the clock a little bit, because this is a very fine, super fine, premium grade lubricant specifically designed for electrical equipment. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can get the flywheel turning here. And what do you know, guys? Look at that. One little push One little push, and she's absolutely chooching right now. Look at that. Let's turn it over for a minute. And you can see that that is turning beautifully now. That sweep second hand. And I want to tell you what, this thing is heavy here. I mean, when they made a clock, forget the plastic. I mean, there is no plastic. This front glass on here is glass. It's not plastic, okay? So people say, why do you buy old junk? You buy old junk because it's got some balls to it, okay? It's got some quality to it. It was American-made stuff. So, you know, I'm very happy to report with just one little push, that clock seems to be working really well now. The movement is unfrozen. I want to give that lubrication a chance to work in, and I'm going to let it hang upside down a bit more here and get it in a location where it's going to be stable, because I want to follow the well, I just stopped it by sitting like that, but I want to be able to follow the sweep on it and make sure that the clock hands, the big hand and the little hand, the hour and the minute hand are advancing here. I'm excited, guys. That's theoretically, that could be, just argumentatively speaking, that could be the first time in many, many years. And I want to be careful how that sits there because it blocks the running. But I want to let this run a long time before I put her back together again, because I want to get all those gears, I want all that lubricant that I shot in there to work itself through real well, okay? Guys, this could be one of the easiest and one of the best tricks you ever have. If you go to something like a, if you go to something like a yard sale or something like that, and you see an old metal clock and you ask the guy if it's working, probably he's going to tell you, no, I don't think so, it hadn't worked for years. That's why it's chooching in the yard sale here. You know, if it's a really cool clock and one that's almost 60 years old and is made like a battle tank, that's really a cool thing to see if you can get that going again, because a lot of times it's just because of some goo and grease on the bearings. And if you use the right lubricant that you can buy in a electronic shop like Radio Shack, you got a real good chance, hit that, get that flywheel going, and she'll chooch and work herself good, because these clocks were made to last and last and last. So that's the chooch. I'm going to go on the internet and see if we can find anything particular about this model as we wrap up the kitchen table doctor for the Banjo clock repair. Well, I think knowing some of the history of these companies like the United Clock Companies is interesting as working on the clocks themselves. I was able to find out a little bit more on the internet that I think a lot of us have probably heard of the Sessions Clock Company, and evidently, it merged or bought out the Sessions Clock Company in Connecticut, and some of these clocks, they say, are marked Sessions United. They made a huge variety of styles, and I think it's very interesting that a lot of it was sold through Sears Roebuck and Company. And they also said a lot of these were used as carnival games prizes as the big prizes, but of course the games were rigged. So, very interesting that they would also serve as prizes for some of the shows. There's a lot on the net, actually. You can go to some of the sites. They have some of the styles for some of the clocks that are on. You can pick your clocks, the United Metal Goods, the Welch Company, and there's collectors for everything and everything in the world. This has been a fun little project. I think it took a grand total of about a half hour. So I'm gonna let the clock run for about an hour and make sure she's still running good. I'm gonna let it run forever, actually, as long as she's chooching good. Thanks for being with me for this episode of Kitchen Table Doctor Repair. And we actually did this one on the wall. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being with me.